Hey y'all, it's Laura. Welcome to another Cocoa Vanilla Studio video. This time we are doing a process video with a very large photo. This photo is 6 by 8, and so it is going to take up quite a big portion of my layout, and I know that going in. And so I am going to go ahead and set up my background fairly simply. So to start with, I am going to create a little white border with this white cardstock, and then I'm going to bring in some Cocoa Vanilla Studio pattern paper. So it does end up being a pattern paper background in the end, but I did want this like nice white crisp border. I think that it looks really nice behind this sort of mixed media style background, and I think it gives a wedding layout in particular kind of an elegant look. I have been working on a lot of recent photos lately, and this one's been sitting in a section of my desk where I have photos that I want to do a special layout for. So obviously this is part of my wedding album, and I wanted to do a layout that really focuses on this one photo. Now this one photo is from my wedding, which was 15 years ago now. Yeah, that sounds right. And this particular photo is my favorite photo from our wedding. And my husband has since passed, but I did want to go ahead and scrap this photo, even though it is really hard to scrap photos like this of a much happier time. I do want this one to go into the album. I'm ready for this one to be in that album, and I'm hoping to finish up that particular project pretty soon, and we'll do a flip through for you guys when it's finished. But this photo in particular has a lot of meaning to me, and it's mostly just because my husband is actually using his real authentic smile in this photo, and that was a very rare thing for him to do. I'm the type of person who enjoyed getting photos taken, and so marrying someone who scrapbooks is probably a big challenge for someone like that, because I constantly have my camera out. I would constantly take photos, and I'm sure it got annoying. So for any of my fellow scrapbooker friends out there whose spouses or friends or kids don't particularly enjoy the fact that you take photos constantly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And he was definitely that type of person. And so he had to adjust over the years to the fact that I do take photos a lot and fully intend to scrapbook them. And I don't often would get the actual authentic smile that was his true smile. Quite often it was just a I'm making my wife happy smile. Despite some of the minor issues we had on our wedding day, things with flowers, you know, the typical sort of things that just seem to go wrong on a special occasion like that, I have so many photos of him smiling genuinely, and I really appreciate those photos so much more now that he is gone, and I want to showcase those moments as much as possible. The Midnight collection from Cocoa Vanilla, which is one of their older ones, but it is also one that I find to be very elegant, and I think it's perfect for wedding photos. I have several collections that I'm using in this particular album, and so far I think they all work really well together. But this might be one of my favorites, although to be fair, anything Cocoa Vanilla kind of falls into that category. I started this layout, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I did have this idea with the vellum layered on top of that darker kind of navy paper with the floral underneath of my photo in my mind. Really fun texture to use, especially in formal events and especially in wedding layouts. And it is something that I turn to quite often when I'm working in my wedding album. Now, when I initially started playing with this vertical embellishment cluster here on the left side, I was thinking that I wanted the florals near me. I thought that was perfect. Put all the beautiful feminine florals next to me, the bride. However, the further I got with this, the more I realized that if I was going to do this, I probably should have put the larger space on that left side. And because I didn't, it feels really crowded. And so I will realize that this isn't going to work. It's just too crowded on that left side of the page. And so I will off camera just flip the whole thing to the right side. But until I'm ready to give in to that eventuality, I am going to continue to try to make it work. Now, a couple of things I was trying to keep in mind here was that I did want to use this you and me, but there are two things that I'm trying not to cover up on the bottom of this photo. And one of them is the rose in my husband's pocket or next to his collar there. The other is my necklace. And both of those things were very important to me in the wedding itself and were things that I personally picked out. And so I didn't want to cover them up in this photo. And so I'm trying to be very particular about how I arrange my title and that little banner chipboard piece to not cover those things up, but also kind of border that bottom a little bit. And that by overlapping my photo just a little, it does help make the bottom half of that photo with that kind of sketchy floral in with the photo so that they feel like a cohesive piece and not like two separate pieces that I've just overlapped. So by creating the title on top of that border, it just gives it a nice smooth flow from top to bottom. Now, a couple of things that I did decide to try. I brought in some chipboard hearts that I'm going to pull off the chipboard, so like the couple of layers of chipboard behind it, just to make them a little bit thinner because I'm tucking them in underneath of the florals. So I am going to rip that back off, but I will just tuck those in amidst my florals. I will also trim out my florals with a little bit less of a white border on the outside, which helps them to blend together a little bit easier. And I also came in with some word phrases. So these white word phrases are from the sticker sheet here on the left side. And I've just pulled them off and popped them onto that right side amidst my florals for just a little bit of wordy fun. Change that I made when I moved the floral embellishment cluster to the right side is I decided to go ahead and put the beautiful chipboard banner underneath of my title instead of out to the side. And the reason I chose that is because there was no way to put that you and me on my side of the photo without covering up my necklace. And so I purposefully moved everything over to the right side of the layout, and I will find a way to balance it out, don't you worry. But I did at this point think this is just going to be a right side heavy layout. That's just the way it's going to have to be, because I always know I'll fix it later. I am very much the type of scrapper that's kind of like, let's just go with the flow, see what happens, and if there's any issues, we'll fix it when we get to it. I try not to stress myself out at all when I'm scrapping. This is absolutely just openly creative, fun time for me, and so I don't want to stress. I don't want to worry about perfectionism. I don't want things to be perfect. That just sounds incredibly annoying to me, and I don't want any part of it. And so instead, I just enjoy myself. I allow myself to try things out, experiment a little bit, and see what I like. And sometimes I surprise myself, and I really enjoy when that happens. What I'm doing with florals is creating levels or layers around my florals to give them the appearance of dimension and depth. I'm just using some very flat, papery pieces here, some chipboard that I've removed the layers from. So these are all very flat pieces, some stickers, things like that. But I want to give them the impression of that 3D look. And so to do that, I add layers. And one of the easiest ways to add layers is to put clear stickers behind your florals. Stickers have some little tiny X's on them and little crosses, if you will, and so I'm just tucking in a few of those back behind my floral clusters all the way down the side. So I have two at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom, and that allows me to carry that theme of those little detail pieces all the way through the embellishment cluster. Now, another thing I'm doing is adding in these little hearts, which are also clear stickers, and they again are adding the appearance of depth. Now, how these look on this background really gives it a stamped look, which I love, and I love the fact that it looks like I pulled that off. There was no stamping involved in this layout, none at all. Another one was kind of a mixed media paintery look, and I tried out the peach one and the blue, and the peach one turned kind of too light of a color. It went kind of yellow underneath of there, and so it didn't really work out. And so I end up just pulling up the peach one and then saving the blue one and sticking with the blue one underneath of my title, just again to give it more depth, give it a little bit more interest underneath that title so that it can stand on its own as its own embellishment piece. So we have our one long vertical embellishment cluster on the right. We have our title sticking in from that embellishment cluster to give a kind of a T shape there. And then we're going to have another cluster on the left side of the page. Now, I am purposefully thinking about how busy I make this layout because we have one large photo and it is taking up quite a lot of real estate on this page. And so I wanted to make sure that I am not over embellishing or going too crazy with this particular layout, and I'm trying to keep it fairly simple here on the right side. So we just have that long embellishment cluster, a little bit of word phrasing. We're going to clear that up and clean that up when I glue it and tape it all down, which I usually do off camera. So like magic, it is now all glued, taped down, and I have gone ahead and trimmed out the white border on all of those florals. So that is all permanently attached in place now. I've decided to outline the outside of this beautiful navy paper, and I'm adding in some faux stitching lines here and there around the edges, just again to give it a little bit more detailing. It just adds some really, really subtle hints of levels and depth, and I really like the way that that looks. Now in this case, I have decided that I want to add a journaling spot here on the left side of the page, partially to balance out this title and large cluster on the right, and partially because I actually do want to do some journaling. And so I decided to use I started to look through the 6x8 paper pad, thinking that was a good plan, and then I remembered that I had these cut aparts from the 12x12 paper, and I was like, yes, this one's perfect. It's a bit of a wreath, and it is one of the 3x3s. And so I'm going to go ahead and add this frame on top and trim it out. And then I'm going to layer it on top of another frame. And we're going to add this little tag kind of peeking out from the side. So these three items are all paper. They're very thin, not going to add a lot of bulk to the layout, but because they're layered on top of each other, they give the appearance of depth. So again, we're trying to give that 3D look to the page without adding a ton of bulk to it. Now I did add enamel dots before I glued and taped everything down, and so that was my scattering for this particular page. I always end my layouts with scattering and splattering, which is just a way of adding a lot of little details to the layout to finish it off. Now because of how thin this back border is, I am going to use some glue, and I just prefer to use the tonic glue pen because it's easy. I like to make my scrapping easy on myself, and I think I accomplished it with this one. So bringing in my T-square ruler to add in some journaling lines into this little journaling box, and I really like this little pop-up here on the left side that is completely separate from the right side, and so it does balance out weight-wise with that title and the overall weight of the cluster on the right side, but it doesn't take away from the photo at all. If anything, it gives more of that same 3D look that I've created on the right side on that left side. How that came out. Now I'm adding in some silver Nuvo drops this time because my wedding photos were pink and silver. I did stick mostly to silver in the album as well. Now I don't have a silver spray, so I just use some silver watercolor that goes on looking black, but it dries in silver. And this is my controlled and uncontrolled splattering, and we'll finish off this layout. Now if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this layout, and if you'd like to see more detailed photos, you can check out the Coco Vanilla blog at cocovanilla.com.au. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, bye y'all!